Uncle Willie J., William Nicholson Jeffers, was the brother of Benjamin Jeffers, who ran the Hunt Club at San Domingo Farm in the Gunpowder Neck during its heyday of hunting and fishing parties. William Jeffers came from New Jersey, and he had quite a career as a sea captain. One of the accomplishments was he was commander of the Monitor during the Civil War. But his latest known claim to fame right now is he took part in the capture of John Surratt after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. John Surratt was the son of Mary Surratt, who was the first woman ever executed in this country. The latest movie, The Conspirator, has her accepting that penalty to cover up the crime of her son. But I don't think anybody really knows the truth. However, after the assassination, John Surratt, Mary Surratt's son, was the only known conspirator to escape. And he went up through Canada. He ended up in Rome, and he became a member of the Papal Army. He was identified by someone and captured, escaped, and ended up in Alexandria, Egypt. This William Nicholson Jeffers, who was commander of, I think the boat was called the Swatega, and I've got information, it was a gunboat, and I think it might have been used during the Civil War, and I've got info on how many guns and how big it was and so forth. He was near the Egyptian shoreline, and he was commanded to go pick up John Surratt. He picked him up and brought him to the United States on the Swatega to stand trial as part of the group that planned to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. And believe it or not, John Surratt got off. So he was never...
So was he found not guilty?
He was found not guilty. There's an interesting... He spent the rest of his life lecturing on all of this. And in the back of this is one of his lectures.
Okay. Lecturing...
on the assassination of Lincoln.
That he wasn't at?
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, it's very twisted.
Yeah, really.
It's very, very twisted.
Do you have any quotes that you can read in there from that are relevant to Jeffers?
Let's see. I marked stuff.
Okay, and you're reading from?
I'm reading from a compilation of the dispatches from the official record of the assassination of President Lincoln from the Civil War Library in Austin, Texas. I have the boat wrong. It's Swatara. Swatara. He was promoted to Commodore in the year 1878. That's pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
He was also involved in modernizing naval guns from the smooth barrel to whatever this...
Rifling, I think they're called.
I guess. Here's some information on the USS Swatara. It was launched in May 1865. It was a wooden-hulled screw steamer gunboat, 216 feet long, with a beam of 28 feet, drawing 13 feet. She displaced 1,113 tons, could make 9 knots, and was armed with one 60-pounder, 6 32-pounders, and 3 20-pounders. These are gone. She was decommissioned in 1871. In here are actual transcripts of the John Surratt trial with Jeffers on the witness stand. Let's see. He's questioned by a Mr. Botwell, which I think was a lawyer for. And he's asked, are you in command of the Swatara, which was recently arrived in this country? Jeffers says, I am. And did you bring a prisoner by the name of John Surratt? Jeffers answers, I do not know whether she brought John Surratt or not. She brought a prisoner from Alexandria, Egypt. Was there any person on board the vessel who was known as John Surratt? No one on board knew him. He was delivered to me by the Consul General at Alexandria and represented by him to be John Surratt. I have no doubt that is his name, but I have no personal knowledge on the subject. Isn't that wild?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone on board who had previously known John Surratt in Washington? Jeffers answers, there's a person by the name of Saint Marie who claimed to have known him. Were there any officers or men belonging to the ship who had previously known John Surratt? Jeffers answers, none whatsoever. He goes on to talk about where he was kept on board ship, what he was fed, his appetite, how many times he was brought up on deck. And he evidently was very withdrawn and communicated with no one. And then he was delivered to the authorities by Jeffers in Washington.
Does it say anywhere how long the trip was coming back? I was just curious.
I have a feeling it wasn't short.
Oh, at 9 knots, I'm quite certain it wasn't short.
Here's a list of orders relative to the state prisoner. He is not allowed to converse with any person whatsoever. If he desires anything, the request shall be referred to me. This is from Jeffers. No person is to be permitted to converse within his hearing upon any other subject than the ship's duties. The orderly and a sentry specially charged with his guard will be responsible that he does not escape. He will be kept in the room arranged for his reception in single irons only, so long as he keeps quiet and makes no attempts to escape. The room door is to be kept locked. He will, when necessary, use the captain's water closet. His meals will be supplied by the wardroom mess. The food to be cut up and a spoon only to be allowed with which to eat it. He is to be carefully guarded against attempts at suicide, whether by jumping overboard or otherwise. If B attempts to escape, he is to be fired upon by the sentry, the orderly, and the officer of the watch. The upper tier of the carbines in each chest is to be kept loaded and daily examined to see that they are in good order. It is to be carefully borne in mind that the prisoner is put on board for safekeeping and transportation to the United States, and that his death is preferable to his escape. If the prisoner becomes violent, he is to be placed in double irons, hands behind him. This is good stuff. Mm-hmm. He will be provided with a mattress and 2 blankets. The sentry will be relieved every 2 hours, and he, with the corporal of the watch, will assure himself of the presence of the prisoner before relieving. The corporal of the guard and orderly, the latter on the poop, will be present when he is taken to the water closet, will see the door locked on his return, and hand the key to the officer of the watch. When in port, the officer of the watch will be present whenever the door is opened. Meals may be passed in through the window. At the discretion of the commander, the window may be left open in the daytime in sunny weather. William Nicholson Jeffers, Commander, USN.
Interesting.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I don't want to be his prisoner.
Mm-mm. Well, I wouldn't want to be the one that supposedly killed the president. That certainly puts you on a pretty nasty list.
And then it goes on and on with him on the witness stand. John H. Surratt's lecture, given in the courthouse at Rockville, Maryland, December 6, 1870. Cost of entry to the lecture, 50 cents. This is an amazing compilation. It's kind of neat to find a relative like this. My mother's maiden name was Jeffers, and I can remember as a teenager
Now
my mother would start talking about him, and my boyfriends didn't pay attention to me. All they wanted to hear about was him and the monitor.
Yeah. He was your mother's?
Great uncle. Mother's great-grandfather was Benjamin Jeffers, and he was the innkeeper at the San Domingo Hunt Club, which was a farm owned by the Cadwallaters and Carrolls in the Gunpowder Neck.
Which is now part of?
Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And that's the connection. This is the brother.
Mm-hmm. So that would be your great uncle.
And Sarah's great
uncle.
Yeah.
Wow. I have a feeling he was really a tough bird. And the picture of him sitting on the turret of the monitor upstairs makes him look like John Belushi. But there's also a newspaper up there, the Harper's Weekly, dated April 12, 1862. And it's the Battle of the Monitor and the Merrimack. Now, I get very confused about that because the newspaper, the actual newspaper, has him in the battle. The textbooks have him taking over after the battle. And of course, a reporter in a newspaper could get it mixed up. Oh, these are wood cuttings. And there's a wood cutting of the actual battle at Hampton Roads. And then below it, it being a northern newspaper, they focused on the Monitor rather than the Merrimack. And there are wood cutting pictures of the interior of the Monitor. And there's a wood cutting of his picture as commander.
It does seem kind of strange that
I've always said it was strange.
Wrong.
I don't know when Mark Seymour came here. He was all confused about it too. He was writing one of these historic novels like John Jakes used to do. And he was doing it on John Surratt. Because evidently this whole escape and pursuit was quite fascinating. That would make a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just going after John Surratt. You got him being in the army in Rome.
Yeah.
And then you have him in Alexandria, and you have the whole escape from Rome to Alexandria, and then the capture, and then being brought to the United States in the trial. The John Harrison Surratt Jr., born April 1844, died April 1916. The youngest of John and Mary Surratt's 3 children. John was a student at St. Charles College in Howard County, Maryland, when he met Louis Weichman, who would later play a pivotal role in the execution of his mother. Following the death of his father, he gave up his studies to assume the role of postmaster in Surrattsville, Maryland. At this time, he also became a courier for the Confederate States of America. Dr. Samuel Mudd introduced Surratt to John Wilkes Booth on December 23, 1864, and Booth induced Surratt to join his plot to kidnap President Abraham Lincoln. That alone should have gotten him convicted. According to Surratt, his association with Booth ended on 17 March 1865 when the abduction plot failed. Later claiming to be in Elmira, New York on the night of 14 April 1865, Surratt fled to Canada upon hearing the news of the assassination of President Lincoln and remained hidden there during his mother's trial and execution. He made his way to Europe on September 15, 1865, when he eventually enlisted in the Papal Army. He was ultimately arrested by Papal forces acting on behalf of the United States, but made a daring escape that took him to Alexandria, Egypt, where he was again captured and returned to Washington, D.C. for trial. Surratt's trial opened on June 10, 1867. More than 150 witnesses were called over the course of 2 months before the trial ended in a hung jury on 10 August. 4 jurors voted guilty, while 8 found him not guilty. Surratt undoubtedly benefited from the fact that his trial was held in a civil court and that by that time the country had tired of the assassination and its effects. Surratt settled in Rockville, Maryland, where he became a teacher. There he presented a public address on his experiences as a Confederate courier and his association with John Wilkes Booth. He admitted to being involved with the plot to kidnap Lincoln, but denied any role in the assassination. He blamed white men for the execution of his mother, but claimed friends in Canada had kept news of her plight from him. Surratt later taught at St. Joseph's Catholic School in Emmitsburg, Maryland, before taking a position with the Baltimore Steam Packet Company, where he rose to the position of treasurer. He died in Baltimore on 21 April 1916. The last of the conspirators, he's buried in the New Cathedral Cemetery in Baltimore. He left, leaving his mother behind to face all that.
Except that he claims he was in Elmira.
Yeah.
And evidently 8 people had their doubts. Out of 12.
Isn't it interesting that he escaped right before? Right before.
It doesn't say he just says he was in Elmira, New York on April 14th. And then fled to Canada when he heard what happened. Which I think it would be tough to come back and say, oh, I'm here to save.
Did you pick up in the movie that the mother really felt he was guilty? And her whole goal was to protect him?
I did have the feeling that she was protecting him. I'm not convinced. I think she felt he was involved. I don't know that. I don't have the feeling that she necessarily believed he was actually there. I mean, I feel like she knew them. You know, he knew them, and you know.
Now she may have known he was involved in the plot for the kidnapping.
Even today, if you knew that, you know the odds that your kid's going to get away with it, right? You know, so yeah.
Well, you know, of course, my heart goes out to the innkeeper. And as I was saying to Sarah, you know, she can come in here with her girlfriends and they can sit around and talk forever. I haven't a clue.
Exactly.
You know, they're out there talking away. It's just like guests sitting in here. They could be conspiring. My concern would be how many want coffee in the morning. So I can see how she could be.